We're going to start with NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake, USA Today's Washington bureau chief Susan Page, Atlantic staff writer Ashley Parker, and former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade. All right, Garrett, I want to start with you. Where do we stand on these federal firings, and how is the White House responding to the pushback? Does it seem to have stopped them at all?
No, it hasn't, Christina. We know that there's more to come still on the firing front. We've not heard, for example, from the Pentagon, where we expect DOJ officials to be focusing this week after repeated promises from Elon Musk and the president that they would look at defense spending, as well as they've looked at some of these domestic agencies where the cuts that we know about have been both deep, including in places like the National Institutes of Health, where more than 1,000 people were let go, and broad, affecting things you might not expect, like the Kennedy Library in Boston, which had to abruptly close yesterday. The foundation that runs it saying that some of their federal employees were cut unexpectedly. That forced them to close yesterday, although they were expected to reopen today. The White House's viewpoint on this is that this is what people voted for. They voted for a dramatic overhaul of the federal government, and that they believe, the White House does, that the American people deserve a federal bureaucracy that's committed to the president's agenda and that is fiscally responsible, and that is ultimately what they'll get when this process is concluded. Christina?
Susan, I want to turn to you now. Is this what people voted for? You know, there's more than a dozen lawsuits trying to rein in or end DOJ. There's some protests across the country, but I just got back from the Munich Security Conference in Europe, and European leaders kept asking me, why aren't people on the street? Why aren't you seeing a bigger pushback in Congress from regular folks? Why isn't there a larger reaction, and is that surprising you?
You know, it's quite different from our experience with President Trump's first term, when there were massive demonstrations and opposition in Congress, including from a handful of Republicans. We're not seeing that this time. It is true that Americans last November voted for change. We know that 2/3 of Americans said the country, and more said the country was headed in the wrong direction. But exactly what direction they want the government to go, it's not clear that this is the prescription that they knew they were signing up for. That will be the test. President Trump is determined to put in place some of this very extensive change that he's talking about now. And then we'll see the reality of the consequences of that. And at that point, I think Americans will want and need to weigh in on whether that's really what they wanted.
Ashley, the president told Fox News in that interview he thinks DOJ will find $1 trillion in fraud, waste, and abuse. But as the kids say, we haven't seen the receipts. How can Musk claim that DOJ is the most transparent organization ever when we're not really sure who's in it, where they came from, or what exactly they're cutting at all times?
Well, he can claim that, but he certainly can't claim that plausibly. Even going back to what the administration put out earlier this week, saying that Elon Musk is not, in fact, the person who's running DOJ, which defies credulity. I mean, what you're seeing here, and this is deliberate, but this is what a lot of the people who are reacting against it are reacting against, is this ethos more common in Silicon Valley and some of Elon Musk's private companies of sort of break everything and then try to piece back the shards together later if necessary. And so you are even seeing now some Republicans who don't want to criticize Trump, they don't want to criticize Musk or DOJ, but they're actually realizing that, wait a minute, eliminating all of this money, cutting all of these employees, you cut a bunch of employees in my state, in rural America. You defunded an NIH program that's critical for my state or my district. And so they're now sort of in this odd position, despite the fact that Congress actually has the power of the purse, of kind of begging Trump and Elon and these various entities to, you know, just don't cut my bridge, don't cut my road, don't cut my people at this agency, which is not particularly effective.
Right. A lot of these programs had big footprints in red states, partially because it's sometimes cheaper to do some of these things in the South and big states with big university towns. Barb, I want to turn to you now. The president's executive order yesterday implies that only the president and the attorney general can interpret law and that agencies can't contradict them. Is that how that works?
Well, it's not how it has worked traditionally, Christina. This is, sort of trying to take back the independence of independent agencies. So we have a huge administrative bureaucracy, for better or for worse. And what their role is to take the laws passed by Congress, which are phrased in very broad terms, and then to administer those laws in a very granular way. They develop their own rules and regulations. Instead, President Trump is now going to consolidate all of that power at the White House and with the Attorney General. This is all part and parcel of, I think, a larger strategy to implement what's sometimes referred to as the unitary executive power. So the Constitution vests the president with the executive power, but there's a theory that it vests him with all executive power and that there is no other part of the government that can do anything outside of the purview of the president. It is a dangerous move in the view of some, including me, that it means that even if orders are unethical or illegal, if the president says this is the way we're going to interpret this law, then that's what goes. It's not the rule of law. It's whatever the president says it is. I think we're going to see challenges to this, but ultimately I think that Donald Trump could find a sympathetic Supreme Court because we've got some of the justices there, Roberts and Kavanaugh among them, who have advocated for this unitary executive theory throughout their careers. So it could be that he is rewarded with this interpretation.
I also want to ask you about the president posted last night the DOJ has to immediately, as he puts it, clean house and fire Biden-era U.S. attorneys. Look, anyone who lives in Washington knows that turnover is pretty common at the start of the new administration. People decide to leave, take private sector jobs. You know, it happens every time. But this feels different. What to you stands out about what's happening at these agencies, especially DOJ?
Well, as you said, removing Biden appointees and replacing them with Trump appointees is certainly within his prerogative. But we're seeing something well beyond that. We saw the firing of every lawyer who worked on the prosecutions against Donald Trump. We have seen an investigation by the U.S. Attorney in the District of Columbia for the prosecutors who worked on the January 6 cases. And we have seen that order demanding the dismissal of the Eric Adams indictment. And now just yesterday, the resignation of the chief of the criminal division in the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office for refusing to freeze the assets of someone whose identity is unknown because she found no legal basis to do so. It really suggests that the era, the post-Watergate era norms and principles that federal prosecution must be done in an even-handed way and may not be based on partisan politics is out the window, and that we are in for a new era where Donald Trump sees the Department of Justice as merely one more political tool in his toolbox.